All right, ready to get into some filters.
Always ready for a deep dive, especially when the company is as interesting as Atmis Filtration Technologies.
They just dropped their Q4 and full year results for 2024, and
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack.
I was just looking over the numbers myself. What's fascinating is how they're handling this, well, kind of a tricky economic situation we're in.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a tough market all around, aftermarket, first fit, and then you throw in the whole tariffs thing.
Right, and yet they're still posting some impressive results. And from what I can see, they're laying the groundwork for some serious future growth.
I'm seeing the same thing. Beating targets, strategic moves, the whole 9 yards.
So before we get lost in the weeds, maybe, can you just give us the high-level overview? How did they actually do in Q4 and then for the full year?
Okay, so to put it simply, they crushed it.
Mm-hmm.
For Q4 2024, their sales hit $407 million.
Okay.
That's a 1.8% increase compared to, the same time last year. And their adjusted EBITDA...
Which essentially tells us, how profitable their core operations are.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Landed at $78 million. 19.1% margin. Very healthy.
So a solid Q4. How about the whole year, though?
Yeah.
Did they manage to, keep that momentum going?
Oh, they did. Full year 2024 sales reached $1.67 billion.
Nice.
That's a 2.5 jump from 2023. And their adjusted EBITDA for the year was $330 million with a 19.7% margin.
Now, I know we're going to dig into the details later, but just stepping back for a sec, what makes these numbers particularly impressive?
I think it's all about context.
Uh-huh.
We got to remember that Atmis is operating in a market where both the aftermarket and the first fit sectors are, they're pretty soft.
Okay.
It's just harder for everyone to sell their products right now. And yet they're not just treading water, they're thriving.
You keep mentioning first fit and aftermarket. And for those of us who, maybe don't have filters on the brain all day, can you just quickly break down what those terms mean?
Sure. First fit, that's all the filters that come standard in brand new vehicles. It's straight off the assembly line.
Right.
Aftermarket, on the other hand, is all about those replacement filters. So, you go to the auto parts store to get a new air filter for your car, that sort of thing.
Okay, so they're crushing it in both areas.
Yeah.
They didn't just, pop up out of nowhere, though, right? Yeah. Didn't something major happen with Atmis last year?
You're right. Back in March 2024, they became a fully independent company.
Oh, right.
It was after a common share exchange, like a spin-off,
Right.
Before that, they were part of a larger entity.
So basically, they're finding their own way now, establishing themselves as a standalone company, and they're knocking it out of the park while doing it.
Exactly. Shows they're adaptable, strategic, not just reacting to the market, they're shaping their future. And a big part of that is this 4-pillar growth strategy they've been talking about.
Okay, yeah. Let's break down that 4-pillar strategy. What's the first pillar all about?
All right, so pillar number 1, it's all about getting a bigger piece of that first fit market we were talking about. They're working directly with, the vehicle manufacturers to get their filters installed in new vehicles.
So they're going straight to the source.
Yeah.
But isn't that market kind of tough to crack? Aren't those deals locked in years in advance?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, but they're being proactive.
Okay.
Realigning their organization, putting more muscle into account management, making themselves a more attractive partner to those big OEMs.
The original equipment manufacturer.
Exactly. No. And are they seeing results from this? Absolutely. They landed a major deal with a European OEM for fuel filtration and crankcase ventilation technology.
Yeah.
That's big. It shows their strategy's working. Plus, they launched their next-gen Nanonet M3 media, which is, it's all about smaller, more efficient filters, even for tougher conditions and new fuel types. Got to stay ahead of the curve, right? Especially with all the changes in energy sources we're seeing.
Makes sense. So, winning over the big automakers with cutting-edge tech, what's the second pillar of the strategy?
Pillar 2 is about really owning the aftermarket, where we go to replace our car filters.
Right.
They're aiming to grow that part of the business as quickly as possible, but not at the expense of profit.
So it's not just about selling more. It's about selling smart.
Exactly. And they're doing a few things, expanding their product line, offering more options for more vehicles, and making their FleetGuard brand, which is already pretty popular, even more widely available, basically making it easier to, find and buy their filters.
Convenience and accessibility.
Exactly.
But how are they managing to grow in a market that's, well, you said it yourself, not exactly booming?
Right. Well, they're outperforming the market by 2 percentage points.
Wow.
It shows they're taking market share, which is huge.
Yeah.
And they're doing that by being strategic. For example, they're zeroing in on high growth areas like Latin America, held a big customer event there recently, building those relationships, getting insights,
Yeah.
even using data analytics to make sure their products are available, right when and where people need them.
So they're not just throwing stuff out there and hoping it sticks.
No, no, very deliberate, very thoughtful, playing the long game, and it's working.
All right, on to pillar number 3. What's that all about?
So pillar 3 focuses on transforming their supply chain.
Okay,
Now, this might sound kind of boring, but trust me, it's key.
right.
They've been putting in the work to become more independent, more efficient in how they actually get their products to customers.
What kind of changes have they made?
Major moves. First, they moved 95% of their distribution network away from Cummins, who they used to be a part of. Gives them more control, more flexibility.
Makes sense.
And get this, despite a freight recession, they've managed to increase their adjusted EBITDA margin by 410 basis points since 2022.
410 basis points. Whoa. Can you translate that for those of us who don't speak finance? What does that mean for their business?
It means they're getting more profit out of each dollar of sales. It's a sign of a healthy and efficient operation. And they're doing all of this while becoming operationally independent. It's pretty remarkable.
Impressive. Okay, we've got 3 pillars down, 1 to go. What's the final piece of this puzzle?
Pillar number 4, that's all about new territory.
Oh,
They're looking beyond cars and trucks. They're going after industrial filtration markets.
so think air filters for factories, that sort of thing.
Exactly. They see a ton of potential there, and they're not just dipping their toes in. They're actively going after acquisitions to really make a splash in those markets. Industrial air, liquids, even water filtration.
So going big, but is that wise, when they're still relatively new as a standalone company?
It's a risk, sure, but they're not just buying up companies randomly.
Nope.
They're being strategic, looking for businesses that fit their existing expertise, offer those, opportunities for synergy.
Makes sense. Not just growth for the sake of growth. It's got to be smart strategic.
Right. Long game.
All right, so we've got stellar performance, the whole independence move, and this ambitious 4-pillar strategy. But before we go any further, I got to ask, are there any storm clouds on the horizon? Any challenges they're facing?
Well, there are a couple of potential bumps. One is the tariffs.
Right.
They're especially worried about the impact on their manufacturing facility in Mexico.
Which supplies?
A big chunk of the U.S. market.
Right, right. What about the China market? That's a big one for a lot of companies.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, they're expecting it to stay pretty weak, something they're going to need to watch closely.
Okay, so tariffs in China are potential headwinds. Let's end this part on a more positive note.
Yeah.
What's their outlook for 2025? What are they expecting for the year ahead?
Well, for the global aftermarket, they're anticipating growth somewhere between flat and 3%.
Okay.
Now, that might sound cautious, but remember, they're planning to beat the market by about 2% because of their growth initiatives. Plus, pricing is expected to add another 1% on top of that.
So even in a, kind of slow market, they're confident they can keep growing their slice of the pie.
Yep, exactly. First fit side, things are a little more tricky. Softer markets in the first half of the year, but they're hoping for a rebound in the second half.
So some turbulence early on,
Right.
but overall still optimistic.
Yeah, they're projecting total company revenue to be anywhere from flat to 4% growth for 2025, with sales between $1.67 billion and $1.735 billion.
Okay, so pretty decent range there. What about profitability? Can they keep up those impressive margins?
Well, they seem pretty confident about it. They're projecting an adjusted EBITDA margin of 19% to 20% for 2025.
So essentially, they're maintaining their current level of profitability, which is already strong.
Right. But they're not just sitting back and relaxing. They're staying focused on optimizing costs and making their operations as efficient as possible.
So a lot to be excited about, even with those potential challenges out there. What do you think? Should we dig a little deeper into some of these key takeaways?
Absolutely. There's definitely more to unpack here.
Perfect. We'll be right back after a short word.
Oh, actually, we're just going to keep going. So, one thing that really jumped out at me from the Q&A was all the talk about their margin expansion. I mean, they hit that 19 to 20% target a full 2 years ahead of schedule.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable, especially when you consider all the challenges they've been dealing with. How do they manage that?
It really shows you how focused they are on, operational efficiency. They've been really smart about managing those costs and making sure every dollar counts.
They did mention that they'll keep looking for ways to save money, But it sounds like the focus now is using that, revamped supply chain to drive revenue growth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, they've built a solid foundation now. It's all about using it to grab more market share and, well, expand into those new industrial filtration areas we talked about.
Speaking of expansion, there were some interesting questions about their first fit market strategy. It seemed like analysts were a little curious about those long lead times, to lock in deals with the automakers.
Yeah. Right. Those wins can take a while to show up. We got to remember a lot of what Atmis does is tied to emissions regulations, and those changes, they're planned years in advance.
So it's a long game, but it sounds like they're making progress.
Oh, they are. They mentioned a big win with a European OEM back in 2024 that's going to give a boost to both their first fit and aftermarket business.
So a win-win. What about those tariffs, though? That seems like, I don't know, kind of the big question mark hanging over them, especially with that factory in Mexico.
It's a concern, no doubt, but they seem to have a plan. They've been running simulations, trying to figure out the potential impact.
Yeah.
And they've got some levers they can pull. Pricing adjustments, supply chain tweaks, that kind of thing.
They were a bit vague on the specifics, but they did talk about, their dynamic decision-making capabilities.
Right. It seems like they're ready to be flexible, respond quickly if things change. Agility is going to be key, especially with all this economic uncertainty.
Their approach to mergers and acquisitions also came up. They've been pretty active in, chasing deals in the industrial filtration space. But so far, no dice.
Yeah, they seem to be taking their time, really making sure they find the right fit instead of just, jumping at the first thing that comes along.
It's quality over quantity.
Exactly. It's not about just buying any old company in that sector. They want ones that, let them leverage their strengths, scale efficiently, complement what they're already doing, thinking long term. That's a good sign.
Let's talk a bit about their Nanonet M3 media technology. It sounds like it could be a real game changer for them.
Oh, I think so. It's a pretty big deal. Improved performance, broader applications. It can handle different fuel types and, well, challenging operating environments. Really important with all the shifts we're seeing in the energy world.
Do you think that tech could give them a leg up as they move into that industrial filtration space?
Absolutely. Could be a major selling point. It shows they're committed to innovation and developing those cutting-edge solutions that, meet the needs of their customers, whether it's automakers or, big industrial companies.
We talked about their We Protect campaign earlier, but I want to come back to it. It seems like it's more than just marketing, It's about creating an identity that goes beyond selling filters.
Yeah, it's about purpose.
Okay.
They're highlighting that commitment to sustainability, cleaner air and water, a better future.
And it's a smart move. More and more investors and customers are looking at ESG factors, environmental, social, governance, that whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just what you do, but why you do it.
One thing that kind of surprised me was their cautious outlook on the China market.
Yeah, they're expecting more weakness there. And that's a big deal given China's role in the global economy.
Seems like they're taking a wait-and-see approach, ready to adapt if things change.
Makes sense. A lot of uncertainty in China right now. They're being flexible.
So after all this, after dissecting this earnings call, what's your overall impression? Are you bullish, bearish, or somewhere in between?
I'm leaning bullish. They're navigating a complex situation, but they've got a clear strategy, they're focused, and they're committed to innovation.
They're a young company, but they've got potential.
Agreed. And they're making the right moves to, really take advantage of that potential and become a leader in the industry.
Before we wrap up this section, I have a thought for our listeners. Atmis is putting a lot of chips on filtration tech. What does that tell us about the future of clean air and water? And the role these companies might play in a world that's dealing with climate change and resource scarcity?
That's a great question. I think it shows you that companies are realizing that addressing those environmental challenges, it's not just the right thing to do, it's good business.
All right, so let's move on to our totally outrageous, not at all financial advice trade idea based on what we've learned about Atmis.
Yeah.
What if Atmis took their filtration expertise and that We Protect campaign and launched a line of high-end eco-friendly face masks?
Whoa, no, that's interesting. They've got the know-how and they've shown they can build a brand that people connect with. Imagine an Atmis face mask that's not only effective, but, stylish, sustainable, the whole package.
Right. It taps into that whole health and wellness trend, aligns with their commitment to a cleaner future. They can even, partner with a fashion designer, create a limited edition line or something.
I love it. It's bold, but hey, it could work.
Right. Okay, so that's our totally wild, not at all financial advice trade idea. Just having some fun here, folks.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe Atmos is listening.
You never know.
All right, that does it for our deep dive into Atmis Filtration Technologies earnings call. We hope you found this insightful and, well, maybe even a little entertaining.
And as always, we encourage you to do your own research and make your own decisions.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Okay, so we're back and ready for the final part of our Atmis Filtration Technologies deep dive. We've talked about their performance, that big growth strategy, even some of the challenges out there. But now I think it's time to, look ahead and try to answer some of those big questions about their future.
Sounds good to me. I think a lot of investors are probably wondering if they can, keep up this amazing margin growth. They crushed it in 24, but is it sustainable? Especially with all the economic uncertainty out there.
Yeah, I mean, can they pull it off?
Well, they've said that cost optimization is still like top of mind for them, and they're really focused on using their new and improved supply chain to drive efficiency and, grow that top line.
Yeah.
It's a tough balance, but honestly, their track record suggests they can handle it.
Right, so they've got a plan. What about their overall growth strategy, though? Can they really achieve, serious growth in first fit and aftermarket and still push into industrial filtration? That's a lot to handle.
It's definitely ambitious, no doubt, but they've laid out a pretty clear roadmap and they're actually taking steps to, make it happen. First Fit is all about building those relationships with the OEMs, getting those design wins that'll keep the revenue coming for years.
And in the aftermarket, it's more products, reaching new customers, and, using data to make sure their distribution is on point.
Right. And don't forget those strategic partnerships and building a strong brand presence, both crucial as they, move into that industrial filtration market.
Okay, yeah, let's talk more about that move into industrial filtration. It's a big part of their plan to, diversify, but it's a new area for them. Are they really ready to, handle that kind of expansion?
I think so. They're not starting from scratch. I mean, they know filtration tech,
Yeah.
and they're, taking that knowledge and applying it to new things. Plus, they're being really careful about their acquisitions. It's about finding the right fit, not just, buying whatever's available.
It's not about buying up companies just to buy them. They're looking for something that adds value, something that's, going to make a difference in the long run.
Exactly. Long game. That's what I like to see.
Let's go back to those tariff threats for a sec. They seem to be taking a wait-and-see approach. How big of a risk do you think that is for their business?
It's a wild card, that's for sure. I mean, the impact could be huge, especially for that Mexico facility. But, they're watching things closely. They're running scenarios, doing what they can to be ready if things change. I know they've mentioned some options like adjusting prices, maybe tweaking the supply chain a bit.
So they're not just, sitting there hoping for the best. They're actually making plans for different possibilities.
Right. Being proactive. They're also talking to, the right people, advocating for themselves, trying to, I guess, minimize the potential damage. It's messy, but they're not afraid of it.
And we talked about the China market, how they're expecting it to stay weak for a while. How much of a problem is that for them?
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. China's a huge market, and any slowdown there, well, it can affect everyone. But Atmis is also, checking out other markets with high growth like Latin America, diversifying that revenue, not relying too much on any one place.
Smart. Spread the risk. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot. I got to ask, what's your honest take on Atmis Filtration Technologies? What does the future look like for them?
Predicting the future is always tricky, right? But honestly, I'm optimistic. Young company, tons of energy, clear vision, and a good strategy. And they're executing well, investing in innovation, building a brand that stands for something.
Definitely a company to keep on your radar. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we get to that, our little "this is not financial advice" segment?
Just this, watch Atmis. They're a great example of how to navigate a, complicated and constantly changing world. It's proof that even when things are tough, with the right approach, companies can do more than just survive. They can thrive.
Great point. Okay, are you ready for our totally out there, not at all financial advice trade idea?
Always ready for that. Let's hear it.
Okay, so what if, just hear me out, what if Atmis took all their expertise in filtration, right, and that whole We Protect message, and launched a line of, I don't know, like super high-end, eco-friendly face masks?
Whoa, hold on. That's not bad. They know filters, and they've shown they can build a brand people actually like. An Atmis face mask could be effective, stylish, sustainable, like the whole package.
Exactly. It plays into that whole health and wellness thing, fits with their, their whole mission of a cleaner, healthier world. Maybe they could even team up with a designer, do a limited edition thing.
I'm liking this more and more. It's a bold move, but hey, it could work.
Right. All right, so there you have it. Our totally wild, not at all financial advice trade idea. Just having some fun, folks. But hey, maybe Atmis is listening.
Fingers crossed.
And on that note, that's a wrap for our deep dive into Atmis Filtration Technologies. Hope you found it useful, informative, and, maybe even a little fun.
As always, do your own research, folks. Make your own decisions.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.